Welcome to the Top 200 Podcast with your host, Herschel Fawn.
What is up, everybody? Herschel Fawn from High School Top 200. And this is the Monday morning podcast on a Thursday because I got a bit busy, had a bit of a tragedy in the family. And the way that it goes, it's pretty painful. But for the loss that we had, everybody that's out there, all my family, just know that I love you all. But we're gonna get into this rugby stuff, right? We're gonna, as I said, this is Monday morning podcast. Go like, subscribe, and share, all that kind of stuff. Comment. Let me know your comments. Let me know your thoughts. I got actually because of the way that this is going. And for the short notice, I thought I would just answer some questions that people have sent me over the last couple of days. And this is kind of stuff that I was going to address on the live, on the IG live. But maybe next week I'll do that. Because, I mean, maybe I'll just invite people on. If you want to jump on and have a chat, answer some of your questions, maybe I'll just add you guys on and, just have a conversation, answer some questions, all that kind of stuff on my IG. And obviously that would be for the younger ones because older people don't really know how to, depending on what your age is, I guess. IG is probably not your thing. Most of your grandparents probably don't have IG but are interested in first 15 rugby. And so maybe that would just be a different avenue for some of the viewers, or maybe record it and put it out like that, something like that. Anyway, I'll do something like that. But some of these questions that were sent to me, I'm going to answer on this podcast, and then if I get any other questions, maybe I'll leave that for IG Live next week, and then anyone that wants to jump on while I'm on live, hit me up, and then I'll just join you in, and then we'll just chat. All that kind of stuff. And like real chat, like not like idiots that just want to come on and just be dickheads, just to jump on there, like not waste my time like that, but just, if you want to jump on, ask some real questions or discuss games or players or my thoughts on different things, like that's fine. Like I don't mind that kind of stuff. I mean, everyone needs to have like a conversation about stuff. I mean, that's kind of like where I was at too, like especially with like obviously with these reps that have the rep teams that have been selected. I know some of you guys are going to be I guess annoyed that I'm talking about it again, but if you knew what I knew about it, then you'll definitely ask questions, and you'd pretty much be on my side about wanting the answers, but it's not about that because they've just been named, so it doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter with this year's namings, but it should matter in the future. This is kind of how I want to explain is that it should matter in the future. It should matter next year, the way that this year's one was done, and I know 100%. That they didn't do their homework, or if they didn't do their homework, there's something else happening because some of those selections blew my mind a bit, and I have receipts to the point where I know how I can tell you exactly the reason why players shouldn't be considered for those teams and those rep teams. And I'm not just talking about New Zealand secondary schools either. I'm talking about New Zealand secondary schools, what the Barbarians is, what the under-18 Maldies is, the selection for the Blues, the selection for the Chiefs, the Hurricanes, from what I've got, the Hurricanes. Actually, the Crusaders one was actually probably the most I think the Crusaders did the most correct selection. I think that one was a lot closer than what it should be. And the Highlanders one was pretty good too. But the other ones weren't. And this is where New Zealand Rugby need to hire someone that does exactly what I do. And so that there's people that that are accountable for what selections they make. Like, for example, this year, if there was someone like myself that was working for NZR and they know pretty much everything that I know, and the selections came out for who was being considered, that person can go, well, why this kid, or why this kid, or why this guy, or why did you pick him over him, or that kind of thing, because then at least the selectors can be held accountable, just like All Black selectors are, or just like because we have televised NPC games, everyone sees what's on show, so everyone has a pretty good opinion for why, depending on what your rugby knowledge is, why someone is selected over somebody else. And I guess that when it comes down to naming of franchise squads, everyone was pretty on board with like why someone else is selected, and you pretty much have to go deep into the rosters of every franchise to go, well, why that guy? And you're only asking about 3 or 4 names at the end, depending on who's your franchise, right? But then this is why we have the draft, and why we have discussions about in the media in terms of Super Rugby, of why other players missed out and then they end up going overseas. And people can have an honest conversation about that, because we all get to see the games. We all get to watch TV and go, oh, okay, we can match players up, and we've seen them for a few years or so. And we're watching grown men that have played since they were 20 all the way to they're like 33, 34. So we kind of already have an idea. This is high school rugby though, first 15 rugby. Nobody else out here, and people don't understand this point where and a lot of credit is not given to high school coaches, is because you have a new team every single year. You pretty much have to start at the beginning every single year with a clean roster. That's why it's important that you have returning players coming back. The more returning players, the least building you have to do, right? And so when it comes to New Zealand secondary school selections and reps and all that kind of stuff, I'm the one that has been watching them for 3 years. And someone in New Zealand Rugby needs to hire someone that does that same thing, because then they can also hold selectors and stuff accountable for why are they being considered. Now, this is how, and then I think I've explained this before, but this is how rep rugby goes, right? And how your name gets considered for rep selections, all right? So in rep selections from your teams for, say, let's just say, I'll just use Waikato, because this is where I'm from. In Waikato, all the coaches will say, these are the names that I consider for the Chiefs. And the head coach, puts your name forward, or doesn't put your name forward, for consideration. Just consideration. Not you made the team, but just consideration. So that people at the Chiefs, who are selecting for the Chiefs, have a look at and say, okay, this is who they have. This is not someone going around and going, hey, Cambridge, give me your last game, or give me the last 5 games that you guys had. Or they're not saying, St. John's, you guys played Whanganui Collegiate, then you guys played St. John's Hastings, then you guys had one against St. Paul's and St. Peter's. So give me those 4 games, and let me have a watch of those guys, and then give me the rosters from all of those 4 games so I can see exactly the number that I'm looking for. They don't have guys like that. That's not how selections are made. Do you know what I mean? That's not how selections are made. That's how selections should be, but it's not. Now, I don't know if the Chiefs, I'm talking the top franchise for the Chiefs, They don't go to Bay of Plenty and go, give me your top 7 guys that you want to put in considerations for the Chiefs. They have someone watching all those games, going to the trainings, having a look, and they're putting a lot of energy and work and footwork into that kind of stuff, which is strange because this is like, yeah, we've got the games, they televise them on Sky, they do a great job and they show you every angle and all that kind of stuff. Then all you need to do is go and say, hey, what's the character like of that kid? What's the character of that guy? We've already done our homework on him since he's come from high school and club rugby, made it into NPC, and we've already followed him along. So there's not much of something you can even learn more of somebody else, because you've already got everything that you want to know, and then you just go, wow, he had trouble on his defense, wasn't really covering space a lot, didn't know how to, shut down in the angles and things like that. But now that he does, you're just like, okay, it's better. High school's a bit different. High school's different because you can go from a year 11 skinny kid to a massive guy in year 12. You can go from second 5 in year 12 to a prop at year 13. Taking those skills of carrying the ball, quickness off the mark, footwork, all that kind of stuff, but now all of a sudden he's a big body kid, and you're like, oh, we've got a bit of a problem. Because now that kid's different. He's got size, and he's got shape, and he's a bit of a mongrel and can hit hard. Now we'll put him in the front row, change the dynamic of the team. We've got a different pod that looks different out there. That's the difference between first 15 rugby and why we should have someone like myself for NZR to also do the same thing that I'm doing. So to keep a watch of all these kids. If I can do it, somebody else can do it too. They will be the ones that keep these guys honest to their selections. Make them accountable for why they choose and select someone. Not because someone told me these 6 players. It's because, no, I watched 5 of your games, and every single game, this guy was the one that impressed me of 5 games, which is a really good sample size of someone. To be selected as 5 games is a really good sample point. Especially if they're year 13. And if you're doing the job that I'm doing, you would already recognize some of these fellas from year 11. Because then you have boys like from year 11 who will start in year 11, you go, oh shoot, who's that young kid? He played pretty good in this game. Fell off a bit, played really good. Oh, he's starting now. And then you start building up these guys. This is exactly how I do it. I'm telling you how I do it. So all the year 11s now that I've already taken notice of and put into the ranking, I was like, oh cool. So over the summer, I'm going to say, now what is Ollie Mathis going to look like when he comes back as a year 12? He's my number 1 player in the country, plays open side number 8. Is he going to be an open side, or is he going to be a number 8 in year 12? Is he actually going to get bigger or taller? If he gets a bit taller, does he become a lock? If he gets a bit faster and he gets more direct in his running, where he becomes that runner that he's been this year, where he's started crashing at like second 5 midfield kind of area, and he's the one that actually sets that platform to attack out wide. If he gets bigger and faster, does he stay there? If he gets faster and he gets a lot more quicker and becomes more defensive oriented, do we leave him at open side? These are the questions that I'm already asking myself looking into year 12. So if someone's doing something that I'm doing, after watching 5 games of St. John's and going, oh shoot, who's that year 11 kid? He's going to go from there, and then take it into year 12. And it's just going to keep going every single year you do something, and that kid's going to have a profile within my mind for 3 years. And if I had seen him at under 15s, that's 4 years. 4 years of that kid in my mind, in terms of he went from here, he went from here, he went from here, he went from here to year 13. And I've seen that progress over a 4-year span. If someone was doing the same job as me for NZR, they would have the same profiles and the same structure that I have for all these boys, which makes me believe that you can get a better argument out of somebody, myself, keeping people who are selectors accountable, and then going to the coaches, wait, no. I want this boy that was doing this, because I saw him as a year 11. He started as a year 11, made his way for year 12, and then he started again at year 13. Why is somebody else selected instead of this guy? Tell me what your argument is, just so I know you have an argument. That's where I'm coming from with these ways that reps are selected. It's not selected because rep guys watch all these games. Like people have been telling me, oh no, they've got guys all over the place watching games. F up. Don't give me that rubbish. 100% do not give me that rubbish. They do not. You don't know. I'm the one that knows. You ask any guy and say, hey, have you seen a guy at your game that's wearing all Adidas with orange, orange Adidas things on there? He's got a big tracksuit. Most of them would say no. Most parents would say no. But you're going to see me at Tuakau and Alfriston at 9:15 in the morning. You know how people know? It's because I take bloody photos of them fellas. Now for me, and I'm just going to be honest, and I'm not trying to say that you guys aren't worth it. Because you are, because I woke up early, travelled from Hamilton up to Auckland to make it for a 9:15 game, and I was early while they were warming up. That's not the best game I could go to. 100% not the best game. I'm not trying to be a dick to you fellas. I'm trying to say that I watch everybody. I try and watch everybody. Those guys don't. Show me your proof then. Show me your receipts that you do that. Now with the technology that we have, I've even expanded more games because of live streaming. And I'm 100% grateful, 100% grateful that schools are starting to do it themselves. And this is the reason why. And this is the reason why I share those games on my platform for other people to watch. Because I watched Dargaville and Kirikiri today. How many of those guys do you think that were part of NZR would have watched that game? Lucas Casey, I've actually seen since under 15s. And he should be at a big school. If Lucas Casey was at a big school like Hamilton Boys, Christchurch Boys, or St. Andrews, or even if he was at Lindisfarne, or if he was at Wesley College, he would be a different player that would be talking about right now. But he decided to stay. Wasn't that it wasn't good enough, he just decided to stay. But those guys aren't watching those games. They rely on that guy that they... so me and this guy that I knew from when I was young, we played club rugby together, and he told me that this guy, bro, he's pretty fire, bro. It's like, bro, do these kids some justice and go watch the games. Ask for the tapes. Ask for them. That's all I ask, is that you ask for the games. Most schools will just give it to you anyway, because they want their boys to be recruited. Now, I know that the head coaches are the guys that spend a lot of time with these boys. But that is still just opinion based of someone else's opinion. The opinion of the head coach going, these boys should be ready in my opinion. Then that selector goes, out of your opinion, I'm taking these boys out of your opinion. And then the blue selection is going, out of your guys' opinion, I'm taking these boys out of your opinion. And then New Zealand's doing the same. Now, if these guys are picked wrong from the start, not really based on anything else but your opinion, without even kind of really watching these boys, then you're not getting the true guys that should be there. Because by the time it goes from your school to your province, then to your super team, then you start getting the film of those guys, and then you're watching film of those guys, of the opinions that you're watching. Not all these other guys that missed out on the boat. So you're not really getting the true top players that if you were able to watch the games, that's who you would take. And that's your opinion being taken by the higher selectors. Coming from the coaches is not the same thing. Coming from coaches is not the opinion that should matter. It shouldn't. Because And here's the reason why, is because there are, as much as we want our coaches to be fair, as much as we want our coaches to be, the guys that are springboarding some of these boys up, we're also all human. We're all human, and human egos get in the way of that stuff. And I've seen it before. And it takes a stronger adult to bypass the fact that this kid is being a dick to them and they don't like the way that he is, that they don't want to consider him for that team. Or for his opinionated selection for who should be considered for a rep team. Now, we all like to think that coaches would be better than that, but sometimes we're just not, because we're just human. Everyone's the same. Everyone has their biases for whatever reason. But if the opinion comes from the guy who watches all the films, and then he goes to the head coach and goes, these are the boys that I'm thinking of, and gives him the names, and then has the head coach go, yeah, you're right with this one, but he goes, but not this one. I actually think this other kid. And then at least there's a discussion going on. And if it has to be character, because boys, you have to have good character. Stop being dicks on your guys' platforms, because these agents and franchises see it. They see the stuff. If your character's not right in the classroom, if your character's not right with your parents, or with the police, or with your neighborhood, or with, the kids at your school, they're going to hear about it. And you can't be like that. You kind of have to be a model citizen in that way to be able to get yourself within these positions where you can prove yourself talent-wise. I know it shouldn't really matter, but it does matter. And it matters because you might be the guy that's on the newspaper that the team doesn't really want to be on the newspaper. Now, if you're bringing that energy and that kind of destruction with you, because it does become destructive, especially in a team sense, when you got heaps of people's egos, they don't want that stuff. So if your ego and character is bad, that's going to cancel you out. So just check yourself a bit. And I'm just letting you know, because that's how it goes. Okay? But if the guy who's a selector watches the games and then goes to the head coach and says, hey, I'm thinking about these 6 boys. What do you think of them? And if the coach goes, yes, no. And he goes, well, why? And then he can actually explain himself. And then he goes, well, who else would you consider? And then the boys that he considers, at least the selector has already watched the boys that he's considering, because he has at least 4 or 5 games, as well as a 2-3 year history, depending on how long they've been playing first 15, of the boys that he's talking about. Now, the only thing that should really come into it is the character of the kid, because if the coach goes, look, he is good, but he is kind of lazy, cuts class a lot, doesn't really do his work, teachers always have problems with him, I try and help him out, he's okay for a week and then he's not, and or maybe it's just like, no bro, he always comes unhappy, he's just got he's got girlfriend problems all the time, things like that. Or if they got problems at home, they can go, well, he's got a little bit of problems at home, he's going to feel like this, but this is how we've kind of worked it, and he'll be fine as long as you keep him to this. Maybe that's the positive thing that he needs, is like that kind of up, all those things can be discussed from a head coach to a selector. But if the selector already has his guys in mind and recommends those guys and sees what the head coach thinks, and they can also play off the fact that they're both educated about these boys, they can have a conversation instead of, hey bro, all those times that we play club rugby together, hey, do you have any boys that you want? It's like, bro, that's not a discussion on these boys. That's not fair on the other guys that have actually worked really, really hard for that, and they have put it on their goals, and they should be in that conversation. For me, it's not like this kid misses out. To me, it's more, this kid should be in the conversation, and some kids are not for some reason. And some kids are in the conversation for some reason that they shouldn't be. Now, everyone knows who I picked. And everyone knows who I think should be in those teams, because, and the reason why I did it is for this very reason. I put my teams out first and who I thought should have been in it, and then the official teams were named. Now to the selectors' defense, they're only given the players that were recommended by someone else's opinion from someone else's opinion from the head coach. And then they only give them film on the guys that were selected, but that means that they're missing out on other people. They're missing out on other guys. They don't know a guy that's only playing first five, but he's really a second five, but from the needs of the team, he's just been playing first five, but he's a way better second five. And then giving that information on and go, hey, this guy's been playing first five only because they have to, but him at second five, he's a master. He's a master at second five. You just got to see him. This is what he looks like. And show him the footage, and then have the selector go, okay, yeah, I think we can transfer that. I know what you mean about that. And then they have already a thing. They go, oh, who are you talking about? They go, oh, yeah, I know that kid. I remember him at year 11 going into year 12, and then he had to play that as a year 13. It's like, oh, okay. No. He's usually a prop, but he went to number 8 just because they didn't really have anybody else. You know, they're good at props, but they don't really have number 8s. And they're like, okay, he's just the best runner, but he's a prop. Those are discussions that they can have, but it can't come from the head coach giving his opinion without some kind of pushback from the guy that he's giving the names to. It can't. It shouldn't be. It shouldn't be. If I can do this by myself and pretty much have a strong opinion on at least 70 to 80 teams in the country, then why can't they hire one person to do the same thing that I'm doing just for a little bit of pushback? To keep selectors honest. That's my spiel about it. That's what I feel about it, you know. That's the reason why I get annoyed every time rep selections come around, because these boys picked out of nowhere. It's happened 2014, I remember it happened 2015, 18, where there were some real big ones. I probably would have had it in 2013, but because that was my first year, I was still learning myself and seeing what all the, what the landscape was like of first 15 rugby, and I learned that real quick. And how it was done. And so, for me, it can't be done like this again next year. It shouldn't be. It's going to happen next year because they don't change stuff like this. So it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be done like this, but they're just going to do it like that. So all your development guys that are in the franchise, they get to put their names forward to all these selectors that are selecting for the New Zealand secondary schools and then the Barbarians. New Zealand secondary schools make their selection first. Everybody else goes to the Barbarians, who the Barbarians select theirs, and then the Māoris will select theirs too. So everyone's dealing with the same players instead of going, oh, no, we don't want those players. We've got our own. We've already done our own research and homework on these players. That's the problem with this. And even when it comes to the year 14, my position on year 14s is that I still believe that they're just made an example of. AJ Whaleawhanga and Sam Howling are just made examples of. You know, it's like that's what New Zealand Rugby is trying to tell all you guys who are young year 13s that are thinking of coming back next year because you want to add something to their rugby CV that they know that's going to help them in the future, and their agents look for, and that New Zealand rugby selectors look for as well when they look for your rugby CV, that's a great thing to have. And if you know that you're a year young behind and a year young developed, that you need, and that you feel like you need New Zealand secondary schools on your CV, that's pretty much telling you don't come back because we won't pick you. But we'll just put you in the Barbarians. Now, one thing that I wonder is like, how many young year 13s are we going to see in the Barbarians next year? Now, I have my list. I have my list of guys that I think will be there. And guys that probably won't return for year 14. I bet you they're probably going to be playing in the New Zealand Barbarians, and they're saying that if they missed out, they missed out. It's like, okay, but if that's the reason, if they missed out and they missed out, why are you picking, kids that have left school and putting them in the Barbarians in? If they missed out on Barbarians, they missed out. If that was the case, why didn't you just bring back Nigel? Or why didn't you just bring back Noah Hotham? Make him play halfback even. Get Harry Godfrey, who made the New Zealand under 20s, put him in there in the Barbarians. He's young enough. He's under 18. So is Taha Kemara is older than Noah Hotham. Taha's still in school. And he's older than Noah. Put Harry Godfrey and Noah at 9 and 10. Or have Noah, AJ Faleafaga, and Harry at fullback. Get Peter Lakai back in there. Dom's already there, so that's another good move too. Like all these kind of things. It's like, put those guys back in there if that's going to be your stances. It's like, oh, well, if they missed out, they missed out, but we'll put them in New Zealand Barbarians. It's like, okay, then we'll pick those other guys in. But if that's the reason, it's pretty sad. It's pretty sad. If they're going to make a rule that they're saying we're not picking year 14s next year, say it now. Say it now. Just be out and open with it. They go, oh, we're not going to, even if you're under 18, if you're coming back as year 14, we're not going to select you. Just so the boys know. Just so that the boys know, and that's not what they're coming back for. That's what I think, anyway. So, let's get on to some of these questions. One of the questions I really liked was, can St. Paul's Collegiate handle it in the 1A and the Super 8? Because of their success that they've had over, or pretty much since the CNI started, they've won 6 of them or 7 of them titles. And just the way that they recruit and the way that they build up the guys that are in their team as well, that are at the school as well, has been so good. Like, would they be able to handle it? And I think yes. I think, yeah, they would be able to handle it. I don't think that they would win it. I don't think they'll win the 1A, and I don't think they'll win the Super 8. But I have a feeling they can they can finish top 4 in both of those competitions, especially this year. Actually, I think so. I think this year they could have done it. I think when Who was it? George? Cooper, the hooker. Ferg Burke was there. I think Collins was the other one. I think Gideon was young then. Gideon Rampling was young. The other Māori kid from Auckland, the kid that was from Otara, played centre wing. I think it was when they were young, and they were on the team, and they had they had 2 New Zealand secondary schools in the front row. I think that was 2008, 7 or 8 or something like that. That was one of the years as well, and I think out of the last 7 years or the championship sides, I think 3 of those teams would have finished. This year, including 2 other teams, would have finished in the top 4 of both the Super 8 and also the 1A. They won't come last. They're not. They wouldn't come last in those. No, not at all. I think the way that they have been developed since the start that I've seen them, and that's when Rawlings was there. Gibbs was there, and now Cody, who's there now. Over those three coaches, the way that they have done the development of boys, the way that they've recruited, developed, and put in team structures and in a belief in those boys, I think that's what is the reason why St. Paul's Collegiate is so good. Because you got three top coaches really helping out the boys. Tama Dean had a big deal, a big thing to do with that as well, in terms of helping the boys in their fitness and getting them to a place where they needed to be able to compete with the biggest teams. And so I feel like they would finish top four. Three of those teams would have been able to finish top four of the Super 8 and the 1A. But for the most part, I think that they would have been able to take out big teams as well. Like there will be times where they would be able to beat, Auckland Grammar or Sacred Heart or, St. Ken's or Cowson at some point, Mags. They'll be able to do those on different years depending on what team you're talking about. But they've been so good and so consistent in that CNI competition that if they were able to just stay within compete in those other two, I think they have those players to do that. They have that talent coming through, and then even the under 15 system is pretty good too, in the way that they develop their talent. And with private schools, it's always really hard because you don't really have the numbers. You don't always have the huge quality of huge number of players that have really good quality to them. There's not a lot of quality in those private schools. And so even when recruitment comes around, like recruitment's not 100% guaranteed. There's been some terrible recruits that have gone to schools. And I'm not talking St. Paul's Collegiate, I'm just talking about to schools in general, where they've recruited players from Fiji, Samoa, Tonga, from other schools, and then they're just like, man, we missed on this one. We missed on this. We thought what we were getting was alright. And it just didn't happen. And it's not like this kid's fault sometimes. Maybe it's just the school's fault, or the opportunity's a bit not the way that they felt it was going to feel. Because like when you get recruited, you always kind of think like, oh yeah, this is a great opportunity and good and stuff. It's like, yeah, that's the initial feeling, and I guess the initial feeling and emotion that you're supposed to get. But then going through it is always going to be different. Why? Because you're not in your environment anymore. You're 300 k's away from home. You're not used to the economic class that you're now in with rich kids when you're not from a rich place, or you're not from that. And then mannerisms are always different around, depending on who you're around. You don't like dorm life is a bit, boarding houses are a bit different as well. If you've never done it before, it can be a bit intrusive and within your space that you're not really, and Islander boys and Māori boys sometimes are just like, just keep your distance a bit, man. That kind of stuff. And if you're not used to it, then it can really get to you emotionally. Sometimes if you have a missus back home, I'm taking the scholarship, I will do this, and then, sometimes it just doesn't work out. Maybe it's just sometimes you're a mummy's boy. I'm a mummy's boy. I think I'd like to think I'd be able to handle, boarding, but I don't know. I lived like 100 steps away from my school growing up. I lived on campus kind of thing. I wasn't a boarder, but I lived on campus. I spent most of my time up in Oakstorm when I was at Church College. And so like the way that St. Paul's have been able to get their recruits to perform the way that they've recruited them to perform has been solid from almost all of them. The way that they've recruited. And then the boys that just go to the school and try out and try hard. Like I've seen some boys who have really, really picked up, that boys who just actually go there. They weren't recruited or anything, and then they actually turn out to be really solid rugby players. And it's great. And those are the kind of ones that you really want to really rely on, kind of thing as well. The superstars are always going to be the superstars, but you got to give them the ball. You got to get guys to work, to work, and also to believe that they can do the work, so that your superstars do get the ball. So the plays that are created for those guys, you still need some like henchmen to do that kind of stuff, so the superstar can shine. And we need that superstar to shine, because once he shines and gets that break, we can then tail off that guy. After we did our hard work, we get him into the gap, then we can go after that as well, and then carry on from there. And St. Paul's Collegiate have just done it that way. Whanganui Collegiate is actually getting up there as well in the way that they're starting to perform. And I'm not talking performance in terms of like winning games. I'm talking about consistent, solid teams that are coming through that school and through their rugby program that they've been able to build and still building. And I really like it. The way that they've got it going right now. Next year they should have a New Zealand secondary school player. In my opinion, they should have a New Zealand secondary school player next year. Especially with the way that he's going. Obviously, he still has to play the year to do it, but I think he's on track. And I think, and not even just that, right? I actually think CNI in a way is getting up there, because I know this question was just targeted to St. Paul's Collegiate, but St. Peter's look like they're on the rise too, and consistently good all the time. And most of these guys from the CNI competition are all based around really, really good coaches. Really, really good coaches. So most of these guys who have been around coaching for a long time, or they have been ex-players that have turned into coaches and that have a good mind for rugby. And in all honesty, just because you played for however long you played and however many caps that you got for some team, or that you were an All Black, does not mean they are a good coach and that no good rugby. It doesn't mean anything at all. It really doesn't. Just because you can play the game doesn't mean you can teach the game. And it doesn't mean you can connect with the players that you're trying to teach for them to do the same thing, because that's kind of what it is. And then you have to convince the guys that what you're saying to them is of worth and it's going to work, and they got to trust that when you do it, it's going to work. Saying that to someone is different from actually teaching them how to believe and teaching them how to be confident enough to do that. Somehow St. Paul's Collegiate has done that, and done that with all the players, not just recruits, but all the players that attend and try out for the official team. It just seems to work, and it's really, really taking off right now. And I think that they've got something there, and it's kind of trickled off into the rest of the CNI, because everybody else has lifted up. St. John's Hamilton is the other team that people need to watch out for. With the players that they have coming through, they're only going to get better and better. And those boys that are coming from in the 14s, 15s, 16s, all that kind of stuff, they're going to start believing in how good that program is. Not just because they're winning games, but because boys are getting selected. Boys are being noticed. Boys are getting contracts, all that kind of stuff. Contracts in like rugby as well as NRL. And that's kind of what you want. You want your boys that are younger coming through to believe it as well. And I feel like St. Paul's Collegiate is doing that. I think Whanganui, St. Peter's, St. John's is close behind. I also think Rathkill did really good. Fielding's also another one that's a master in the way that they've been able to get boys to come to their school and believe the hype, and then actually build onto that legacy that they have. And as small as Fielding is in terms of like numbers wise, they have a huge reputation for players, not just the players that are playing in the All Blacks now, because I don't really care about them, but I'm talking about these players that are coming out and become New Zealand secondary school players, and then going on to club and going on to Super Rugby, and just having that board of excellence that they have, where they have all their photos up there and stuff like that. They're getting some good sevens players, all that kind of stuff. And so that's kind of I think the growth in the CNI competition, I've talked about it before, is getting better and better, and that competition needs to stay alive and to stay competitive, to also reach. There's been years where they've been better than the UC, the Miles Toyota Cup. There's been a few years that they've been better than the Wellington competition as a whole, and I'm talking about as a whole, not just like their best team is better than this, their best team. Not that. I'm talking about like, the competition as a whole, if they're better than that. CNI has topped some other teams. They've passed some other teams, and so I think that St. Paul's definitely can compete with 1A and Super 8, and at the same time I feel like that competition can also compete in a way. Now, One of the other questions, I don't want to make. Oh, I don't want to make it too long. I don't know, like, all that kind of stuff. I don't know how interesting this is, but I'm just asking questions. So, another question was like, the guy said, if you took the top 8, if you took the Super 8 and then match them up for where they finished on the ladder with the 1A, team for team, who would have the most wins? So if the number one player, the two number ones played off the two number twos, the two number threes. So this is how it went. So Hamilton boys won the Super 8 and Kelson won. If those two were to play off, I would pick Kelson over Hamilton boys. Just too strong, too tough, physical, sharp backline, good attacking players, all that kind of stuff as well. I think the physicality side of it would be one of the main points. Obviously, you got Essendon, Tuipupo, but then like even Xavier, Tito Harris is another reason. I mean, you got like tall guys like Bingy Slade, like guys like that, and when you have someone like Kobe Shute and also obviously Sam Howling, leading that team around, it makes it better for Zion, makes it better for Santa Loakia, it makes it better for Tony Tuffa to, just to bust through some of these lines, I just think that would be too much for Hamilton. And a one-off game would be too much for Hamilton. That's what I think anyway. The two number 2 teams, Hastings was second and St. Peter's was second. I actually think Hastings wins that one. Hastings wins that one. Actually, no, I don't think so. I actually think St. Peter's wins that one. And it was not going to be down to physicality. Hastings actually got better throughout the year. They're like one of those teams that actually got better throughout the year, but I actually think St. Peter's will be the one that wins that game. And it's not about physicality. I think it's more about organisation. It'll be a good game between Hoyta Stevenson and AJ Faleafala in terms of those kicking games, because that's where Hoyta got a lot better this year, was that his game management and pinpointing places on the field in terms of making teams turn around and run back, finding that space. And sometimes the ball wasn't put out on purpose because he wants that to stick around. He wants them to make that decision to kick it out instead of him doing it and, having the thing. I think Hoyta's done great in that. I just think AJ's done it a lot longer and a lot better and a lot longer. I also think when you have guys like Conrad Toliafo, or if you got Fina Anganofo as well, is another one, and then you got like that front row with Nick Muli there. Sika is another guy there that you can't forget. Like, you just don't want to skip over guys like that who are good runners, who are good ball controllers. I think that they handled the rucks a lot better because they play off a lot of big boys all the time. Sometimes they get over anxious in terms of the rucks, and then they play too long in those pockets that it ends up going into mistakes rather than turning into points. And there's always been a thing, like if you look at St. Peter's scores, like over the last let's say 6 years, even against the lower teams, they're not big scorers. They don't score a lot of points all the time. Even on the weaker teams in the competitions, they don't, pack on a lot of points for some reason. I'm not too sure why. I've always kind of thought like maybe it's the way that they play that it's like a point guard that holds onto the ball too long. And I think they hold on the ball too long, that they draw out the time, and then sometimes don't score off those opportunities. Instead of because right now they have Ciale who will be a massive prospect next year at in the midfield or on the wing, depending on how they see him. But then they've also got Presley is the other one that could go in midfield too, as well as shoot, I'm forgetting her name. I'm forgetting his name. Oh my gosh, my bro. I'm sorry, but those three, depending on who you have and where they have them, you know, those guys can be so effective within that midfield. And I just think that in terms of if they played Hastings, it would just be a bit too much for them. And I would give that. I would give that one to St. Peter's. The number 3 teams. So I'm just looking at the list. Number 3 teams is Rotorua and Kings. I think Rotorua takes that game. Even though you got the 3 guys, well, 4 guys, but I see it 3 as in Francis, Manu Leilua, and then you have obviously Shea Clark and Chicago Doyle. You know, those 3 are sort of the 3, you know, the 3 horsemen, wise men, you know, whatever you want to call them. Those guys are the ones that control the team. They're the ones that control the flow. If they're out, then, and if they don't play well, then, you know, it's a hard thing for someone else to bring up. Matt Monahan is good. I do like him. One of those guys that just does all the hard work, no real shine to him or whatever he does. Oh, the other guy I'm phasing out on is the other tall lock, the Māori kid with the black hair. Too many names. Bradley Fafita will be another good one. Obviously, Yosefa at number 8. Seb at 7 would be a really good one. I think Seb, McDonald, and also Mitchell would be a good matchup between those two at 7. I think that would be a pretty good battle. But then, I mean, if you got Te Hamana, Teote, and then you got Jericho York, who I still think is the best winger in the country. I don't care what New Zealand Secondary School says. He's the best winger in the country. You still got John and that second 5. Depending who you want, Cares at first 5. If you want Cares or if you're Toma, like, you got so many options within that back line, and then that forward pack is just tough. You know, the forward pack is just too tough. Too tough, rough. You know, pretty explosive at times when they run the ball, and they get into a lot of work. Is the other thing that I like about them, is they always get into a lot of work. And then Carmichael is the other one. Even at year 11 as a lock, I still think that he's going to be a big problem next year. And I kind of think that he'll be one of those guys that, even if he grows another 2 inches next year, he looks like he's about 6'3", 6'4" right now. If he grows 2 inches to about 6'5", 6'6" as a year 12, I can see him being sort of a slingshot into that New Zealand secondary schools, and because he doesn't really run like a lock, he is kind of like Taylor Cahill in a way that they're so athletic. They're more blindsides than they are locks, and so like I'm pretty keen to see what he looks like. I know that he's already signed with league, but just watch out for him rugby. Like, his development is pretty mean, and so I think Rotorua would take that game against Kings. Tauranga boys and Mags. I think I think Tauranga take this one. I know, Mags is my dad's alma mater, and Mags have gone better this year. I didn't like the game against Kings. I liked the game against Grammar that they had. Mags had with Grammar. I thought that was a good game. That Tangaroa College one, the bits that I saw of Tangaroa College was a bit shaky. And Tangaroa College needs more props from this year. Not props isn't like they need like tie head and Lucy's, but they need more recognition and a lot more shine from what they did this year as a team, and I thought they were so good. But Mags against Tauranga Boys, I think Tauranga Boys takes this one. Toby Taylor's too good. The backline is young, Matt Stewart in that. Case Meyer, guys like that, Sloan. And an open side as well, Hammond. Because Tauranga Boys is a really hard-working, tight team, and they crash ball really well. That's where Matt Stewart comes into it. And I was hoping that he would get a call up for the 18s, just with his running style, his crash ball ability, so hard to tackle, and he doesn't look like that. You can see that he's short and stocky, but then the way that he hits the line and breaks tackles as well is kind of, it really is surprising. I'm not saying that he can't do it. I'm just saying it's surprising. You kind of don't expect that kind of power coming out of him. Now, he's only year 12 and he'll be back. Him and Case probably going to be one of the best combo 12-13s next year, depending on, if they stay in those positions. Obviously, Aiden Kuka, I think his last name is, the coach and rugby director, I think he is. But if they stay that way, I can understand that they're going to be one of the best combos in the country, those two. And so I feel like that Tauranga will take that game. And if they were to play, it would be interesting if I seen them play. That would be one of the best games that out of this matchup. I don't know. I think that might be one of the most exciting ones. Apart from the first one, Hamilton and Kelston Boys, I think Megs and Tauranga Boys will be the second game I'd watch out of all of them. But I think Tauranga Boys will take that one. 1, 2, 3, 4... 5. The fifth games, the two fifth place, Auckland Grammar is fifth place, and then New Plymouth Boys High School is fifth place. We kind of don't have to guess what happens in that game because that game happened. And New Plymouth Boys won. And I think if they play it again, New Plymouth Boys will win. Again. Just a tight, grinded out team. Shea Portucker's too strong. Plays too good. You got Peter there. There's another one. Liam Day's really good. And I think it might just be their style as well as the other thing. The style in which they play is just... they got big boys that run it up and just do the job. That's what I like about it. Really good size props. They're not short props. They're kind of tall. Got a lot of size to them. Farm boy hard kids. That's what I like. I like the farm boy hard kids that don't care about Islanders hitting them and stuff. They just get up and carry on like nothing's happened. I like those kind of boys and those Taranaki boys seem to be like that all the time. Even when you look at Harwood High School, it's the same thing. And their program's pretty good this year too, even though they're a smaller school. It's like them and Francis Dykes just breed tough guys from the farm, tough farm boy guys. That's what I kind of like, and I think New Plymouth is just that way. Even though Auckland Grammar's got Gage and Riley and John Boy and Cullen and that, I still think that New Plymouth Boys take it again. There just something wasn't right about Grammar, but the season's over now, so whatever happened, that's just how they were, and I think New Plymouth take it again. The next one is Sacred Heart College versus Napier Boys. I think Napier Boys take that one. Both teams are similar in size, similar in shape. The attacks are kind of the same. I think it'll be a bit different, I guess, the midfield. The other one, I think the one that you just have to shut down is PJ. That'll be one. But then even Afa on the other, PJ for Sacred Heart, and then Afa for Napier Boys, they're just going to be a really good battle. It'll be heavy, but I think Gus Brown is a bit too much. Max, Ratcliffe is a bit too much. Gala Malasia is a bit too much. Just guys like that. Even Bethel, out on the back line. Yeah, I just don't think Sacred would have it in that department, and it'll just be too much for them to handle. And so I would give that game to Napier Boys. And it wouldn't be like a large score. It'd be like 2018 or something like that, or 2015 or 21-16, something like that. That's not a huge blowout or anything. It'll just be like that kind of game. Palmy Boys and De La Salle, I would give that one to De La Salle. I think that physical play would because Palmy Boys actually play pretty physical as well, and the approach to the game is physical, especially with someone like Leo Gordon in there. Tane Harvey is the same in the midfield as well. Curtis Hefey is a really good, but I would have Jacob in there at halfback. So I would have Jacob. I would have Jacob at halfback. Then I would have like Curtis. Then I'll have Leo Gordon. Then I'll have Tane, and then I'll have what's his name, Moore at the back, and just have my structure around that. And even if like it was that, because they do run a lot of straight lines, try and open it up in the midfield, because you got someone like Leo Gordon, of course you would. But then, I think Patrick Moimoy would be a bit too much at second five. I also I think that battle will be pretty good. If you got Patrick Moimoy on one side and then you got Demetrix on the other, Patrick Moimoy and Demetrix, then you got Leo and Tane. I think that midfield battle will be a really good one to watch, because it will be physical. Both sides will be physical, and I think that just having guys smash into each other like that is really attractive to watch. I think that's most of the time why we watch league and rugby and American football and that kind of stuff. So I think those two midfields will bring you that kind of excitement in terms of a game. But I think also the physical side that is ongoing, the way that De La Salle play, I have a feeling De La Salle will take that game. And they got a really young team too. They got about 14 boys coming back. Off the top of my head, I think it's about 14 boys. 14 boys with 2 boys that could come back, because they're both, or 3, because they're both, all 3 of them are young year 13s. And then the last one, the 2 number 8s, it would be St. Kennigan's against Gisborne Boys, and I think I would pick St. Kennigan's on that one. Yeah, I think I'll pick St. Kennigan's on that one. So it is pretty much a 4-4 split, I think. 1, 2... Yeah. Yeah, 4-4 split, I think. I didn't plan it like that because I changed my mind on one of them. So, but that was just the way that it was. But that would be interesting. I wish that they would do that every year. I don't know where they would have space to do that, unless they played it the next year of how last year's things were, but that doesn't really answer any kind of questions, because the teams have changed, things like that. But that would be interesting. I mean, like in the preseason, the Super 8 and the 1A do have a lot of crossover teams, like preseason games, like Kelston and Hastings play all the time. St. Peter's and Sacred Heart have Gisborne Boys as traditionals throughout the year. Auckland Grammar play Tauranga. Auckland Grammar. Oh yeah, they actually do. Auckland Grammar do play Otago. Auckland Grammar play Rotorua Boys and Tauranga Boys. Auckland Grammar also play New Plymouth Boys as a school traditional against New Plymouth Boys and Hamilton Boys. King's College play Palmy Boys every year, and that's one that's usually done in September or late August. Around those times. And so they do have a lot of crossover games, but lining them up into where they finish in the year to play top 8, that'll be pretty interesting. I think that'll be pretty cool. Maybe they maybe the CNI should do that with the Wellington competition and do that at the end of the year or something, like I don't know, just try and mix it up. I like it when new teams play new schools play each other. I like it when new schools play each other. Seeing Hamilton boys and Mags play this year, I thought was pretty cool. I thought that was like a pretty cool game to watch just because it was new. Mags went up to Whangarei again this year as well. I thought that was a pretty cool game. I like to see, King's College and Christchurch boys play again. I thought that matchup was a cool one. I'd like to see Nelson play someone like Rotorua boys, or have Napier boys do like a Southland boys game every year. Those I think those matchups would be cool. I mean, because you have quad ones as well. The Presbyterian one's pretty cool, where they have Lindisfarne, St. Kitts, Scots, and Stack, St. Andrews. So those ones are pretty cool. It'll be pretty cool to see John McGleish up these ways too. That was a good one. Even Francis Douglas, when they travelled down there, I thought, fine, that's a pretty cool matchup. That's a cool matchup. St. Bede's and St. Peter's with that new cup that they've got, I like that matchup too. So I'm always interested in how and different schools crossing over to different competitions, and to me and like in terms of what I do, it makes all these matchups real interesting in terms of, so St. Peter's playing St. Bede's is more like this is a 1A against a Miles Toyota Cup, meaning that you kind of represent for your competition, and everything that happens in your competition is pretty much a crossover, and go, wow, if St. Peter's beat St. Bede's, then and St. Bede's beat these guys, then it's safe to say that St. Peter's will also beat that person or beat that team as well. And so for me, that's how I like those crossovers. That's why I like the Hamilton boys, New Plymouth playing, Auckland Grammar, and then also the ones where St. Peter's and Sacred Heart play Gisborne boys. Those crossovers too. I think those are real cool. But that's our pod for today. I better cut it off now and sign off, and then maybe if I pose the questions of what we're going to do on the next IG, I want to just try it out. I'll try it out to see what it's like, and I don't even know if anyone will jump on. That's the other thing. Not that I care. I'll just ramble anyway, like how I'm talking now. And then whoever jumps on, jumps on. You can ask questions while I'm talking. But yeah, I'll be on there, and I'll figure it out next week how I'll go. But that's the Monday morning meeting. On Thursday night, which you guys will see on Wednesday night, which you guys will see on a Thursday. So yeah, that's what it is. Here's your phone. Peace.